really proud of our student athletes and our coaches and the way that they've adopted this. And again, just wanted to open up this opportunity with kind of that emphasis for how important this is. So I'll take it off now and let you see my smiling face. And it is good to see everybody. I hope everybody continues to be healthy and safe at obviously what's a really challenging time. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about some of the things that we're going through. Hear from you all what's important and what questions that you have. But I do just want to start with this being July 1. We've kind of put the last academic year and yes, the last fiscal year in the books for us. But although it was a very difficult and challenging year, and obviously our winter sports and our spring sports getting truncated, many of which we had extremely high expectations for. It still was a really good year. It seems like this was many moons and perhaps even decades ago. But in the fall, our women's soccer team won the Big Ten tournament title. Football went to its third New Year's Six bowl game in the last 4 years. Men's soccer went to the NCAAs for the first time in 5 years. And as I said, we were poised to have really outstanding winter and spring sports based on the polls and the results that had been achieved to that point. Kind of burned in our brains now, of March 12th. And on the other side of things that obviously continued on, the academic piece, kind of the bedrock of Penn State and Penn State athletics. That record graduation success rate, NCAA graduation success rate of 91%. Really proud of the effort that has gone behind that, and the continued effort to continue to try to best that. From an APR standpoint, 986 for the department. Which is 3 points above the national average. Again, we need to continue to get better there. But we had a record 20 teams that had perfect single year APRs for that cohort of data that just came in, including football with its first 1,000, which is a perfect score, its first 1,000 single year score in the history of the APR for the NCAA. And then we had 6 teams with perfect multi-year, the 4-year APR scores. We set a school record, another school record, with 144 Big Ten distinguished scholars for the year. And we honored our spring sports student athletes, our spring sport seniors, in the very, very best way we could. This is under the circumstances. This is where social media has been a real positive in giving us an opportunity to say thank you and say goodbye to a number of seniors, all of our seniors, who have been really, really important to us, not only from a success in a competitive venue, but certainly in the classroom and maybe most importantly in the community and in life. We have between 20 and 25 class of 2020 seniors who have taken advantage of the NCAA's extended eligibility and our open invitation for them to return for 2021. I think I said to you all probably the last time we gathered that that's at an additional expense to us of somewhere between $600,000 and $700,000. Obviously, not a small feat in this really, really difficult time that includes economics and it includes the finances. But I'm pleased to tell you today, not unexpectedly, our donors our passionate Penn Staters have stepped up and have completely funded that fund and that cost for us. So once again, Penn Staters have stepped up to help out in our time of need here. And then probably lastly on the subject of kind of overall success and overall efforts this year have been the things that we pivoted to that we've pivoted towards during COVID-19 and during the shelter in place, whether they be our Helping Happy Valley and helping to promote and support local businesses and local efforts, as well as our blue-white tailgates. Our coaches and our staffs have engaged with the community in innumerable virtual ways. So really proud of the efforts there. And again, kind of the thirst and the hunger from our community to remain close and remain engaged with Penn State and with Penn State athletics. Switching to more COVID-19 related subjects, as you're very well aware, we have football, men's and women's basketball, men's and women's soccer, and women's volleyball who have reported back to campus. Those latter three are still in their 7-day quarantine. But all continues to go well for us. I've been very impressed, again, not unexpected, but certainly impressed with the diligence and the discipline with which our students and our staff are following our protocols and following the safety standards to make sure that we do this in a safe and healthful way. From obviously, COVID-19 is not the only difficult thing going on in our community and in our country. The social injustice and the racial insensitivity issues continue and have been illuminated during this time. I'm honored to serve along with 9 other Penn Staters and along with over 150 from our conference on the Big Ten Anti-Hate, Anti-Racism Coalition, and I'm certainly looking forward to that work. The fact of the matter is, this has been going on for far too long, and we haven't found a way to properly address it, solve it, eradicate hate and racism, and so we need to find new ways and or more effective ways, and that's something that I've been really proud of. How particularly our student athletes, our staff has certainly joined in. Coaches and staff have certainly joined in, but particularly our student athletes have stepped up, and I've been doing a lot of listening. Because frankly, obviously, I haven't, we haven't found the answer here. So I'm really proud of the way that our department has stepped up from a voice standpoint. We've got a lot of work to do. We all individually and collectively have work to do to get better. We all have made mistakes and all need to get better there. But we've had a lot of great conversations either amongst teams or amongst our staff just in the last in the last month or so. But frankly, we've done a lot of this work in the last few years, whether it be work around culture and inclusive and safe and welcoming environments, or very specific work. We've got some terrific folks at Penn State, faculty and staff that do very good work around implicit bias, and the athletic department has engaged in that as well. So lots of work ahead, but again, on a number of fronts, very proud of what our students and staff have done just in the last month or so. And then finally, back to directly COVID related. We obviously have been testing our student athletes and staff upon their return. We have, as a university and as an athletic department, made a decision that we will report those results every 2 weeks. We'll do it on Wednesday. I don't know that I will always be the bearer of the of the testing results, but we will make those public every 2 weeks up until such time as the university returns all of our students, and then we'll make a decision at that time how those results might be folded in there. So today I can tell you that we've had 102 student athlete tests as of June 30th, and we have had 0 positives in those 102 tests. So that's a little bit of information on our testing there. And I think, Chris, I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Sandy. Our first question will come from Neil Rudell at the Altoona Mirror. Neil, if you can accept the unmute.
Sorry, imagine that glitch. Thank you.
Neil, how we doing?
Good. 0 tests. That's impressive. Just wondering.
No, 102 tests, 0 positives.
0 positives. Don't confuse me with the facts. Just curious if you could jump into. Yes, we saw Michigan. Have you guys addressed pay adjustments? Have you felt like you have to do that, or do you expect to maybe get through without having to trim pay some salaries?
Yeah, as you all are aware, obviously there's a lot that continues to be unknown. We certainly are modeling a number of different scenarios. I think we're at the point, and I've had the conversation with our head coaches. I've had the conversation with our management team about what the possibility might be around pay reductions. We had an all-staff last week where I mentioned it to the entirety of the staff, just so that they would be aware. I do think, again, without certainty, but that our financial challenges, our revenue shortfalls are going to be of a magnitude that we will need to take some steps around pay. As I indicated, I've had these conversations both collectively and in many cases individually with coaches and our leadership team. To a man and a woman, they're prepared to step up and help with this cause should that be the case. And I think at this point it's probably safe to say that will be the case. All the details obviously still need to be worked out. You're on mute, Chris.
Fail. It's a big fail on my part. I was unmuting Tyler and didn't unmute myself. Tyler Donahue from Lions 24/7.
Hi, good afternoon, Sandy. Thanks for the time today.
Absolutely, Tyler. Thanks for joining in.
Thank you. The last few weeks, we've seen this phase return for the Penn State football program, and obviously a lot of eyes are fixated on football because of the financial revenue. How would you assess these first few weeks with the team back on campus, and what do you think as far as new challenges will be presented when the rest of the student population joins in late August?
Yeah, thanks for this question, because I think it's great credit to our team, meaning our staff and our performance team, our sports medicine team, Penn State Health, who obviously are our sports medicine partners in this. Incredible work done to prepare for the time, 3 weeks ago now, where our first team, which was football, did return. The preparation, the detail in the protocols, the interaction with experts, our experts amongst our faculty, our experts at Penn State Health, our experts within the state, We've certainly, from a sports standpoint, have looked to the NCAA, looked to, in the sport of football, looked to the American Football Coaches Association, so been a tremendous amount of collaboration here. But our performance team, in conjunction with Penn State Health, has really carried the lumber here. And when it was time to start bringing teams back, we were ready. We had been educating our students for at least several weeks, if not longer than that, about what this might look like, what the disease was all about, why it's important to wear a mask, why it's important to wash your hands, all of those kinds of things. I mean, let's face it, we all want to know the why behind something that we're being asked to do, because you're more likely to get buy-in there. So that's the first half of what's been going on. And again, I publicly want to thank our sports med folks and Penn State Health and our performance team for what they've done here. But the second half is the students. To some degree, the staff, who have to follow the protocols, of course. But our students operate in an age group and in a culture where it is all about connection and engagement, and we're asking them now to stop doing that in the way that they've traditionally done it. But I will tell you this: our 6 teams now that are back have been so disciplined. There's been a glitch here or there, which again is where your protocols come in. That number one, they identify that a glitch happened, and number two, then it gets addressed. But I've been really impressed with our student athletes and their dedication to this, their understanding of it, their understanding how important it is. First and foremost, to their teammates' health, their coaches' health, the community's health, but also to their ability to potentially play the sport they love. And that applies to all 6 of these teams. So I take my hat off to them for the seriousness with which they've applied this. I do think some of that is related to and is directly attributable to the amount of education that they've been provided in the last probably 6 weeks. But I do give them a lot of credit for the way they've approached this. PJ Mustafer spoke to our all staff, obviously virtually, last week. And it was really pretty powerful because he didn't just say, yeah, we got to wear our masks and we got to do this. He went through detail by detail about what the policies and procedures and protocols are as they relate to entering Haluba and lifting and getting their meals and doing. I mean, it was clear that those protocols and the procedures, he had taken them. They've been internalized. And they understand why they're important and they're following them. So I take my hat off to them.
Greg Pickle, Penn Live.
Good afternoon, Sandy. How are you?
I'm fantastic, Greg. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. Thanks for doing this. Hey, on the topic of testing, how often will players be tested? Will it vary by sport? And how did you arrive at that decision?
Yeah, let me take the last part first. We've been, again, consulting with experts. Obviously, Penn State Health is an incredible resource for us. And what we determined was that we would test upon arrival. We would test upon return for all student athletes and staff. And then we would test as symptomatic. And that's what we've... that's our protocol for the summer, and we certainly are continuing to take a look at the science, take a look at the conditions around us, and we also certainly will, as the university settles on what they're going to be doing for the fall, certainly kind of fold up under that as well, understanding that we're also going to need to then take some different approaches as it relates to competition and travel for student athletes as we arrive at that point.
John Petishnock, Happy Valley News.
Hey, good afternoon, Sandy. Appreciate your time today and hope you're doing well.
Great to see you, John.
Hey, for fans who won't be able to get into the stadium this season, but who still want to be part of the game day experience, Do you anticipate having any restrictions in place for how many fans can be at team arrival or in the tailgating lots, or even how many vehicles can be parked at the stadium?
Yeah. So most basically, given your question, we are still working on all of the plans as they relate to any seating in our venues. We need to work with the governor's office and what might be our state protocols at that time. I think the last time we talked, I said, hey, we're over 100 days away. Well, now we're just over 60 days away. So the time is whittling away, but we still do have some considerable time. And, for our fans, I know they're anxious. They're anxious because many of them want to come. Many of them want to know what the safety procedures will be for us. And as with anything that we're doing, whether it has to do with student athletes or it has to do with staff or coaches, or obviously in the case of our fans, everything we're going to do relates to health and safety, goes right back to health and safety. And I know our fans are very anxious about that. But before we can put out what our seating might look like, we certainly need some guidance from others. So we're still not quite there yet. But I think, to be fair, John, there are going to need to be restrictions on lots of things. We certainly how our student athletes enter both home team and visiting team, how they enter the stadium, and what fans they or what other people in general they have access to, or frankly don't have access to, is all going to need to be part of the plan. One thing I know about Penn State fans is they're incredibly passionate, and I know we're going to have, for those that aren't able to get in the stadium, they're going to want to tailgate. They're going to want to be there for the team arrival, or any variety of kind of standard traditional Penn State activities. Depending on what it is, that may or may not be possible. So all of that still to be seen, and still to understand what conditions we will be in when we do start to play.
Mark Brennan, Lions 24/7.
Hey, Sandy, thank you for doing this. And do you mind if I ask where you are now?
I actually am with my family in California. We've unfortunately we've had a death in the family, so that's where I am.
My condolences to you. I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you.
Question-wise, can you talk about the value of having a guy like Dwight Galt, who has been around for so long, helping to kind of manage and oversee a lot of what you're doing with this phased return?
Yeah, so Dwight obviously is a key member of our performance team, and I don't think any of us have seen a pandemic, so I certainly won't. I won't attribute pandemic experience to Dwight, but that's about all he hasn't seen. And not only is it that, not only is it his expertise, his strength and conditioning and conditioning expertise, but it's also who he is. He is all about students. He is all about their health and welfare. And so he's been a terrific member of that team, and obviously has a great reputation for strength building and endurance and conditioning with the guys. But then you add to that, our head of applied sports science in Josh Nelson, and Renee Messina, our head of sports medicine and athletic training, Wayne Sebastianelli, Kayla Maturnik Martin, our nutritionist. They've all been a piece of this. They've all been a part of it, and they've been spectacular. Lots of other schools have those same pieces. I'm not sure lots of other schools take the same approach that we do, which is really a collaborative one. And I think that makes all the difference in the world, and it certainly has made a difference in this situation.
Audrey Snyder, The Athletic.
Hey, Sandy, thanks for your time this afternoon. I'm wondering, James had referenced in some interviews that perhaps some players have not felt comfortable coming back to campus at this point. Has that been the case with football? And if a player elects not to come back, say this fall, would their scholarship still be honored?
Yeah, we've been really clear, and it's kind of where our education started again 6 or 8 weeks ago. That this is all about their health and safety, and an element of their health and safety is their comfort. So we have at every turn indicated that it is their decision when the time for each of our teams to be invited back arrives. Completely, the decision is completely theirs, and that their scholarship is not in jeopardy at all. We will work with them on that, and again, both health and safety as it relates to the virus, but also their health and safety as it relates to their acclimatization, their conditioning. All of that will be taken into consideration at every point, whether it be coming back for voluntary lifting and conditioning, whether it be in the sport of football when we start with the summer access on July 13th, or whether it be when we start camp. We'll have to consider where each and every student athlete is in their in kind of their sequencing in their evolution of their health.
Frank Bonanni, Yorkley Daily Record.
Hi, good afternoon, Sandy. There seems to be a little bit level more uncertainty kind of growing about the college football season in some realms, at least. How do you feel about the season going off on time? What do you think the biggest hurdle or worries would be over the next few weeks?
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that there's been a little bit of pessimism here in the last couple of weeks that we really hadn't had for probably about 4 to 6 weeks. We've been ticking up on the optimism scale. I think that the approach that I'm taking to this is I think that's part of the ebb and flow of the virus here. Obviously, my hope is that maybe as people start looking at the masking and the social distancing again, and all of the precautions and kind of understanding or maybe recommitting to the seriousness of this, that we'll see it flatten out. The bottom line is, again, whatever it is we're going to do, we're going to do it only if it's safe and healthy, starting with students and then moving to coaches and staff and then spreading out to our community. So what we're doing is we're planning. Obviously, given the uncertainty, we're having to work on a lot of plans, a lot of different plans, a lot of different scenarios. And when the time comes, if it's healthy and safe to do it, we'll obviously do it. And if it's not, we won't.
Tobias Wilborn, Pittsburgh Post-Gazette.
Hey, Sandy, how are you?
I'm great. How about yourself?
Good. Doing well, and thank you. And sorry for your loss.
Appreciate that.
Slight change up here with the name, image, and licensing stuff. With University Park or State College being a smaller town, how would that have an impact comparison to, say, a bigger city like a New York or Chicago with kids getting endorsements, things of that nature?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and one that I actually welcome the opportunity to answer, because yes, we actually reside in a smaller community, but the fact of the matter is that we have over 700,000 living alumni that populate major metropolitan areas like New York and Boston and Chicago and San Francisco and London and Paris and you name it. And so I think every opportunity from a name, image, and likeness standpoint that any student is going to want or desire is going to be available to them, to a Penn State student, through our unbelievable, incredible alumni network, and it's going to be our job to, number one, educate them on that, and then number two, provide opportunities for engagement so that they can take advantage of that.
Mark Wilgenrich, SI.com.
Sandy, hi, and condolences on your loss. I wanted to ask you about the pros and cons of playing football in the spring from your perspective. What's good? What wouldn't work?
Yeah, we all know it. We started talking about the spring in March. And at that time, we were far more pessimistic than we were 4 weeks ago. And I think even more pessimistic than we are today. I think there are lots of challenges. It would be a last resort. And I think one of the biggest challenges, and it's probably the biggest one in my mind, is the proximity to then the next season, and frankly, a second lost spring ball. Overcomeable if perhaps we're willing to have a shortened season. And again, in the category of something is better than nothing, that may not be a problem at all. But I think probably the biggest concern is the wear and tear on the bodies of our students, and the proximity of a spring season to a fall season.
Dennis Dodd, CBS Sports.
Muted. I'm unmuted.
Now you're unmuted.
Yeah, great. Yeah, Sandy, again, thanks and for doing this, and sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
How do you sell tickets not knowing the capacity you're going to be operating at, or if games are going to be played at all? That's kind of a fancy way of asking what your year over year is right now.
Yeah, well, again, we're thanks to the passion and the fervor and of the Penn State Nation and our fans. We had I think we had a 94 or a 95% renewal rate. We had sold an additional close to 3,000 season tickets. So probably one of the things I can say with certainty, and obviously there's not much I can say with certainty, but without a season ticket, no matter what our capacity is, you're probably not coming to a Penn State game this year. So again, I appreciate our fans and their fanaticism for Penn State football, and we hope to be able to reward them with a safe and healthy opportunity to come watch Penn State football this year.
And if I could follow up, I think you just answered it. If you could sell out right now, could you? I mean, would there be concerns about people coming just for safety precautions?
Yeah, I don't think in any of well, we don't have to do a full house scenario because we know how to do that. we do that frequently. If we're being honest, I don't believe that's in the books. I don't think that's in the cards for us this season. So again, the different scenarios we're looking at would be to try to accommodate as many of our season ticket holders as we possibly can.
Michael Fletcher, ESPN.com.
Hey, yeah, thank you for doing this, and thank you, Sandy. A couple of questions back on the idea of pay cuts. When might you make a decision on reducing coaches' pay? Is that something that's in the immediate offing? And secondly, is there a scenario where you can avoid them, given that the university itself has already made furloughs and made other kinds of reductions?
Yeah. So first of all, with the exception of a handful of part-time seasonal employees who would have been employed sometime this spring, we in athletics have furloughed no one. As you can imagine, most of our employees have been busier than they ever have been in their lives. They've had meaningful work and more to be busy during this time. I have held off. We have, but obviously it's been led by me in asking for any specific amount or telling our coaches and other employees any specific amount, frankly. And I had this conversation with them in probably mid to late April that there was so much uncertainty about our financial position that frankly I didn't want to ask for too much. I also didn't want to ask for too little because I didn't want to have to come back again. I didn't want to say, okay, let's do 5% and then come back in July and say, well, guess what? I need 10. So that's why I've hesitated to really nail anything down. To be fair to all of our employees, I think the time is coming as we've now gotten into the next fiscal year, day one of that today. I think it's I probably we probably need to do that, and we'll do that within the next few weeks. As it relates to avoiding it, as you can imagine, as we're looking at reduced crowds in Beaver Stadium, reduced crowds in Pagula and the BJC and Rec Hall and others of our venues, that we are looking at significant reduction in terms of those revenues, and we have to figure out how to do that. We're looking at lots of different operational ways to reduce our costs. Certainly, as a conference, we looked at some things and have come up with some good cost savings, trying not to impact competitiveness of any of our programs. So we've looked at all of that first, but given the severity of what we anticipate might be coming, pay reductions are probably unavoidable.
Rich Scarcella, Reading Eagle.
Hi, Sandy. Sorry about your loss, and I hope your family is safe and well.
Thank you, Rich. I appreciate that.
I have a two-parter. First of all, can you tell us what the protocol is if a player, coach, or staff member tests positive? And secondly, are you requiring student athletes to sign waivers, and if so, why?
Okay. Yeah, the first one is, again, controlled completely by sports medicine. And that is that the individual who tests positive is immediately isolated. And, depending on whether it's a student, depending on where they live, depending on whether it's a staff member, that could be at home. So they are immediately isolated. And then a term that we've all become very familiar with, they are asked a bunch of questions that assist with the contact. I keep wanting to call it contract tracing. Contact tracing begins, and depending on a variety of circumstances, how far out with that do they go? A lot of questions about how much time was spent together, how much in near contact was spent together, and then our medical team, in conjunction with the state health department. I mean, the state health department really is the ones that that manage the contact tracing. Depending on the answers to those questions, further steps are then taken.
And he also had a question about the liability waiver.
Yeah, thank you. We have not asked our students to sign any kind of waiver. We do have what we are calling our one team pledge. that all of our student athletes and eventually staff will sign. And all that is a reiteration of all of the educational stuff, all of the protocols, and frankly, kind of an acknowledgement of the importance to themselves, their teammates, others, their coaches, how important following these protocols are, and that that they pledge to follow them.
Mike Gross, Lancaster Newspapers.
Hi, Sandy. Thanks for your time today.
Absolutely.
This is more of a clarification. Is 102 tests have been done? Has every athlete who's back on campus has been tested at least once, right?
Yeah, yes. And those 102 do not include the approximate between 60 and 70 that were performed on volleyball and men's and women's soccer on Monday and Tuesday. We don't have all those results back. Yeah, so this was yeah.
That's where I was going, because obviously those 6 teams, the full roster is a lot more than 102. Yeah.
More to come.
Okay, so there's. Do you happen to know like what percentage of athletes have chosen not to come back?
I am aware of some small, by team, some small numbers. It's not huge, but and some of those actually were not COVID related. They were, I'm not ready to come back right now because we're not letting them leave. If they leave, they're going to have to be. I shouldn't say we're not letting them leave. Nobody is under lock and key. We are highly discouraging that they leave, because when they return, they will have to be retested and re-quarantined.
Joe Giuliano.
Did I answer your question? Okay.
Joe Giuliano, Philadelphia Inquirer. Joe, can you unmute yourself? I'm having issues with you. Joe? All right, we'll come back to you.
I'm back. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Chris. Sorry, Sandy.
No problem.
Sandy, I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
I wanted to go, you had referred in your opening remarks to social injustice and the players illuminating their thoughts about it. Would you be willing to allow the players to wear any Black Lives Matter patch during games? And also, Penn State, since Coach Franklin has taken over, the team never comes out for the national anthem, at least at home. Would you encourage them to come out for the anthem and allow them to participate in any protests, symbolic protests that they might have planned?
Yeah. Let me answer part of your last question. The predominant operational mode in college football is that the teams are not on the field for the anthem. There are some exceptions. I know the University of Iowa is one of those, and if you gave me a moment, I could probably come up with some others. But the predominant standard operating procedure for football is that they are in the locker room. I'm going to address this more broadly on a couple of levels. You guys probably don't know this, but I stand up in front of each and every one of our teams at the beginning of every year and tell our students that I want them, this is a time for them to find their voices. I want them to find and use their voices, and that I will 100% support them, even if I don't agree. And again, I'm talking generally here. Even if I don't necessarily agree with their position, if they do several things: one, that they do it respectfully; two, that they've done their research, they know what they're talking about, that they're educated on the subject that they are using their voice around, and thirdly, that they make sure that their coach knows what they're doing. They're not asking for permission, but they need to let their coach know what they're doing. And I've been doing that as an athletic director for 24 years. And this time is no different. I am really proud of the way our student athletes have used their voices here in the last month, and that will not change. Part of our role as educators and leaders is to facilitate conversations, not dictate them. But I would tell you this, that these are conversations that our coaches and our administrators to some degree are going to have on a team-by-team basis. Because yes, it is an individual voice, but if you're going to use the Penn State platform, if you're going to use the team platform, then it involves the team. So they're going to. I anticipate that there are going to be lots of conversations on the team level about how teams want to express themselves as teams and how they want to allow individuals on their teams to express themselves. So I think we'll see a good deal of that this fall.
Ben Jones, statecollege.com.
Sandy, I have a sort of a philosophical question for you. There is a hypothetical line that exists between unpaid amateurs and professionals, and when you add up all the things football players are going to have to do this year and the risk that they assume, effectively so athletic departments can stay afloat, am I wrong in thinking that they've crossed that line?
I'll use your line analogy. If we are coming dangerously close to crossing any line that endangers students, coaches, staff, and our community, we're not crossing it. I don't know whether that answers your question or not, but it's the one that's first and foremost important in my mind.
John Salbert, Center Daily Times.
Hi, Sandy. Thanks for taking the time today, and I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
And so you mentioned 102 positive results for student athletes. Do you have results for coaches and other
102 tests.
102 tests.
No positives.
No positive. But do you have the results for coaches and other personnel that have been tested, and will you be releasing those numbers?
We do have the results. I don't have the number in front of me. We will be those are folded up under the county's reporting. So we will not be reporting those. The athletic department will not be reporting those. Certainly, as a university and a county, those absolutely our community will be fully aware of any positives that exist in their community.
Elton Hayes, CNHI, Pennsylvania.
Hey, Sandy, thanks for joining us this afternoon, and my condolences to you and your family as you all go through this difficult time.
Thank you very much.
I wanted to ask you, yesterday, Jesse Luketa spoke about the logistical issues with returning to State College from Canada. He mentioned Jonathan Sutherland, who's up there in Iowa as well. What goes into having to deal with, the embassy consulates, with making sure that you all are able to get the players back from countries while we have these travel bans, and what kind of goes into making that happen?
Yeah, so we have an international students office at Penn State that deals with the multitude of challenges with international travel on a regular basis. Obviously, this is not regular. There's nothing regular about this. We're very fortunate with our Canadian students and our Canadian student athletes that those I believe those consulates have remained open. And although there are certainly some precautions and some red tape that they need to go through, we're very confident that our Canadian students are going to be able to, it may take longer than we want it to or that they want it to, but are going to be able to get here. The challenge, several challenges on international students in general. The consulates in most countries, the U.S. consulates and embassies in most countries are closed. And then you add on top of that the various travel bans. And so that's going to be a real challenge for our international students in general, and certainly our international student athletes. It's should the consulates open and should the travel restrictions ease, our returning students will will have a much easier time getting here expeditiously. Our first-time students will need, unless they already had their I-20, which I don't know of many, if any, that actually do. They then would have to start the I-20 process, which will slow them down. So that you've identified a pretty significant challenge for that population of students. Again, fortunately, Canada is one where those challenges are going to be minimal. Doesn't mean they're non-existent, but they're going to be minimal compared to the rest of the world.
We have time for a couple more questions before we need to let Sandy go. We'll start with Donnie Collins from the Scranton Times-Tribune.
Hi, Sandy. There's been some schools, especially at the lower levels, that have kind of opted out of playing this fall. And I'm wondering what the procedure might be for you guys if you would lose a team off the schedule who decides not to play in the next month or two. How might you go about replacing them on the football schedule? And would you replace them on the football schedule, I guess?
Yeah, so let's put football aside for a minute. You know, we've already, in a number of our sports, we've had schools contact us, depending on how far they're traveling, and to say that they won't be fulfilling their schedule. So that's already started to happen. It hasn't happened in football, and you know, we have some pretty sophisticated intelligence about you know, who's playing what week, and actually I take that back. It's not sophisticated at all. It's a spreadsheet. So about who's playing when, where, and how, and I certainly think we could take a look at that, and particularly if it's more regional, an opportunity. If something were to get dropped, more regional, we could certainly look at doing that. But I'll be very honest. You know, we just at this point, we want to make sure that we can get as many games as are safe and healthy. Again, if it's not the right thing to do, most importantly for our students, we're just not doing it. And yes, there would be a significant financial ramification to it. There would be a significant community, both economic and kind of morale and psyche implication to that. But none of that is worth risking the health and safety of our students and ultimately coaches, staff, and communities. So, you know, we'd have to take a good hard look at why it got canceled and what the conditions are at the time, and I think that would dictate whether we would even try to look for a replacement or not.
Dave Jones, Penn Live.
Hi, Sandy, and thanks for doing this again. Very much appreciated. If an athlete has a chronic or lasting complication from a COVID infection, will Penn State pay for any and all of those medical expenses?
Yeah. So, I mean, Dave, we have a policy right now that our medical staff and our medical team treat student athletes for, you know, whatever their conditions are. Obviously, we have zero understanding or very little understanding of what any long-term impacts of COVID-19 might be, and that's frankly one of the more concerning things we're starting to read about and hear about in the conversations. You guys have probably heard and read, and I don't know whether it's true or not, but that there are some in our industry that believe that student athletes should get the virus now so that it doesn't impact them during the season, any season in any sport. Well, obviously, as an educator and a leader, to me, that's completely unethical. and irresponsible. So again, I think we've got a lot to learn, but our student athletes know that we're going to give them the very, very best medical care and health and welfare attention for whatever their issues are.
Our final question is Peter Terpstra, WTAJ.
Hey, Sandy. So in the event that folks that have already paid money for season tickets, if they're not able to attend games, people are worried about getting their money back. What can you say to those folks? And what do you think the economic impact could be on State College and the surrounding areas with limited or no fans during football season?
Yeah, let me take the last one first. I mean, in good times, we all talk about the economic impact of Penn State athletics and particularly football. So, we know it would be immense. To your first question, that's what we're looking at now. We're looking at what we think our capacity could be. Talking to the state. Obviously, again, conditions can change. They can get better. They can get worse. So we've got to have a number of scenarios, and we certainly want to, in whatever we do, we want to be able to reward our passionate and very faithful season ticket holders for their investment in Penn State athletics and in Penn State football. So we'll have to ultimately, depending on all of the different levers that pull and what the situation is that we roll out for actually what we can do, how we can honor those that have invested in us.